3 days. That's all it took for Donovan Pierce to realize he'd made a catastrophic miscalculation. I'm Kenna James, and I've spent 12 years at Pinpoint Technologies building systems that actually work, not the kind that look impressive in PowerPoint decks but collapse under real-world pressure. When Pierce stormed into my office that Tuesday afternoon, face flushed and tie loosened, demanding to know why the entire engineering team had gone radio silent on the Helix project, I had to suppress something between a smile and a sigh. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 4 months. Pinpoint had just landed the Helix contract, a massive infrastructure overhaul for a Fortune 100 client. 18-month timeline, 8-figure budget, the kind of project that makes or breaks careers. I'd been architecting distributed systems since before half the company's developers could legally drink, so when the CTO tapped me as technical lead, nobody blinked. The team I assembled wasn't flashy. They were methodical. Brilliant, yes, but more importantly, they understood that sustainable velocity beats heroic sprints every single time. We had Yuki handling back-end architecture, Malcolm on security protocols, Sophia managing database optimization, and Ian coordinating with the client's technical team. Not the loudest voices in company meetings, but when they committed to a timeline, you could set your calendar by it. Then Donovan Pierce got promoted. Pierce had been VP of Strategic Initiatives for 6 months, one of those titles that sounds important but nobody can quite define. He'd come from a competitor where apparently shouting in meetings counted as leadership. Within weeks of his promotion, he started circling the Helix project like a shark that smelled blood in the water. First, it was just observing our stand-ups. Then offering strategic input that contradicted established technical decisions. Then scheduling alignment sessions where he'd spend 40 minutes explaining concepts back to us that we'd taught him the previous week. The breaking point came during a client presentation. We were 3 months in, slightly ahead of schedule, when Pierce decided to elevate the conversation by promising features we'd explicitly scoped out due to security concerns. I pulled him aside afterward, privately, professionally, and explained why those additions would compromise the system's integrity. He smiled. That particular smile some people perfect in MBA programs, the one that says they're listening while actually composing their rebuttal. Kenna, I appreciate your technical perspective, he said, voice dripping with condescension. But this is about relationship management. Client satisfaction. Strategic vision. It's about building something that won't fail catastrophically, I replied evenly. His smile vanished. You know what your problem is? You're brilliant with code, I'll give you that. But you don't understand how organizations actually function. You don't play office politics well enough. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, I'd learned long ago that anger clouds judgment. This was clarity. I see, I said quietly. I'm reassigning the technical lead role to Wesley Ramsey, Pierce continued, straightening his tie. He understands the bigger picture. You'll transition to an advisory capacity. Wesley Ramsey. A competent enough developer who'd spent more time in the last year networking at happy hours than reviewing pull requests. Someone who'd nod along while Pierce made impossible promises to clients. When does the transition take effect? I asked. Immediately. We'll announce it at tomorrow's all hands. I nodded once, gathered my laptop, and walked out of his office. Calmly. Deliberately. Because here's what Donovan Pierce fundamentally misunderstood about office politics: the real game isn't played in conference rooms. That evening, I did something I rarely do. I left work at exactly 5:30. Went home. Made dinner. Thought. People assume technical leadership is about being the smartest person in the room. It's not. It's about building systems of trust, establishing patterns of reliability, and understanding that influence flows through relationships built over years, not quarters. Pierce saw office politics as performance art, grand gestures, strategic alliances with executives, the appearance of control. He'd completely missed the quiet infrastructure that actually made projects succeed. I'd spent 12 years at Pinpoint doing something he couldn't even perceive, earning the kind of respect that doesn't require a title to maintain. The next morning, Pierce made his announcement. Wesley looked uncomfortable but ambitious enough to override his better judgment. I smiled, congratulated him publicly, and offered my full support during the transition. Then I scheduled coffee with Yuki. I'm not telling you what to do, I said as we sat in the cafe across from headquarters. But I want you to understand what's about to happen. Pierce doesn't comprehend the technical architecture. Wesley won't push back when promises get made that we can't keep. And when this project fails, not if, when, it's going to be blamed on execution, not leadership. Yuki stirred her coffee slowly. You think it's going to fail? I think the security vulnerabilities Pierce wants to ignore will surface during penetration testing. I think the feature creep he's encouraging will blow the timeline. And I think when the client starts asking hard questions, nobody currently in charge will have answers that hold up under scrutiny. She met my eyes. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said honestly. I'm going to fulfill my advisory role with complete professionalism. Answer questions when asked. Document concerns when raised. But I'm not going to volunteer the expertise that prevents disasters. That's not insubordination, it's respecting the chain of command Pierce just established. Yuki nodded slowly. I need to think about some things. We had similar conversations over the next 2 days, Malcolm over lunch, Sophia during a hallway encounter, Ian via video call since he was working remotely. I didn't tell anyone what to do. I simply made visible the invisible scaffolding that had been holding the project together. The scaffolding I'd built through 12 years of showing up, delivering results, and treating people like collaborators instead of resources. By the end of the week, Wesley Ramsey was leading a project with a team that had become remarkably literal about following instructions. They did exactly what was asked, nothing more, nothing less. No anticipating problems. No volunteering solutions to issues that hadn't been explicitly identified. No staying late to prevent tomorrow's fires. Professional malicious compliance, executed with surgical precision. Pierce noticed something was wrong within days, but he couldn't identify the problem. Meetings happened on schedule. Deliverables appeared on time. Yet the project had lost something ineffable: momentum, cohesion, the intangible quality that separates functional teams from exceptional ones. He did what people like him always do, doubled down on control. More status meetings. More oversight. More strategic direction that translated into tactical chaos. The team responded by becoming even more rigidly procedural. Every decision required written approval. Every risk needed formal documentation. Nothing happened without explicit authorization from Wesley, who was quickly discovering that technical leadership involves far more unglamorous problem-solving than he'd anticipated. I watched from my advisory role, answering questions when directly asked, providing exactly the level of detail requested and not a syllable more. Kenna, what do you think about the authentication refactor? Wesley asked during one meeting. The approach documented in the technical spec has trade-offs worth considering, I replied. What trade-offs? The ones outlined in Section 4.3 of the Security Review. Can you elaborate? I can schedule time to walk through that section if you'd like. Polite. Professional. Utterly unhelpful in the way that truly mattered. Pierce, to his credit or detriment, remained oblivious. He was too busy impressing executives with revised timelines that existed only in PowerPoint to notice the growing brittleness in the actual project structure. Then the client requested a technical deep dive. This wasn't unusual. Large contracts often have checkpoints where the client's engineering team validates approach and progress. What was unusual was the timing. We were supposed to have this review in month 6. The client moved it up to month 4. Right as several of Pierce's promised features were entering their theoretical implementation phase. Wesley panicked quietly. The kind of panic that manifests as working until 2 a.m. and sending increasingly frantic Slack messages. He needed the team to rally, to pull together the kind of comprehensive technical narrative that demonstrates not just what's been built, but why every decision positions the project for long-term success. The team responded with detailed status reports that answered every question literally while somehow conveying nothing reassuring. The night before the client review, Wesley showed up at my desk. He looked exhausted. I need your help, he said simply. Of course. What specifically do you need? I need you to present the security architecture section. You wrote most of it, you can explain the decisions better than anyone. I'd be happy to present whatever content you'd like me to cover. Just send me the sections and talking points you want addressed. Kenna, I need you to actually help. Not just technically comply. I looked at him for a long moment. Wesley wasn't a bad person. He was just someone who'd accepted a role he wasn't prepared for because it looked good on a career trajectory. Wesley, I am helping. I'm doing exactly what was asked of me when I was moved to an advisory role. If you need something beyond that scope, you should probably discuss it with Pierce. He left without another word. The client review happened on a Wednesday. I wasn't invited. From what I heard afterward, it went poorly. Not catastrophically, the team had been executing competently, if mechanically. But when the client's technical lead started probing architectural decisions, asking about security trade-offs and scalability considerations, Wesley's explanations lacked the depth that builds confidence. The client didn't pull the contract. They expressed concerns. Requested additional documentation. Suggested more frequent technical checkpoints. The corporate equivalent of a teacher writing, "See me after class" on your paper. Pierce went into damage control mode, which mostly involved calling meetings where he'd tell everyone the project was fine while his body language screamed the opposite. And then the team started pushing back. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But Malcolm quietly refused to implement a feature that violated security best practices without written authorization from legal. Sophia identified 3 critical database optimization issues that needed addressing before moving forward, issues she'd have normally fixed proactively but now required formal approval to resolve. Ian informed the client's technical team that several promised integrations weren't actually possible with the current architecture, something I'd mentioned months ago that Pierce had dismissed as pessimism. Yuki was the one who finally made the invisible visible. During a technical stand-up, Pierce demanded to know why progress had slowed. Yuki responded with brutal honesty, "We're executing the project exactly as directed. The issue isn't effort or capability, it's that we've lost the technical leadership that used to prevent problems before they became blockers." "We have technical leadership," Pierce snapped. "Wesley is perfectly capable." "Wesley is a good developer," Yuki said carefully. "But he's not Kenna. Nobody here is Kenna. She built systems that let us work efficiently. She anticipated problems we didn't know existed. She'd stay late to unblock people not because anyone asked, but because she saw 3 steps ahead. You removed that and expected nothing to change." Pierce's face went through several color variations. "Kenna is still available in an advisory capacity. Kenna is following your instructions exactly," Malcolm added. "Which means she's reactive instead of proactive. That's what you told her to be." The meeting ended shortly after, but the damage was done. Not to the team, they'd simply made visible what had been true for weeks. The damage was to Pierce's carefully constructed narrative that his leadership was improving the project. That Friday afternoon, Pierce appeared in my office doorway. Not storming. Not smirking. Actually nervous, which was almost endearing in its unfamiliarity. "Do you have a few minutes?" he asked. "Of course." He sat down heavily in the chair across from my desk. For several seconds, he just stared at his hands. "The CTO wants a full project review Monday morning," he finally said. "The client escalated concerns to their executive team. We need to demonstrate we have a path forward." "That sounds challenging," I replied neutrally. "Kenna, He stopped, seeming to physically wrestle with words. "I made a mistake. I thought Wesley could handle the technical leadership because he's enthusiastic and good with clients. I didn't understand that what you were doing went beyond just making technical decisions." "What was I doing?" I asked, genuinely curious to hear his interpretation. "You were holding the whole thing together. Not through authority or politics, but through, I don't even know what to call it. Trust? Credibility? The team doesn't just respect your expertise, they trust your judgment. They know you won't steer them wrong. And when I removed you, I removed the foundation everything else was built on." I let the silence sit for a moment. "So what are you asking?" I said quietly. "I'm asking if you'll take back the technical lead role. Full authority, full decision-making power. I'll stay out of your way on technical matters." He laughed bitterly. "I'll play office politics well enough to shield you from the executive pressure while you actually fix this." "You told me I don't play office politics well enough," I pointed out. "I was wrong. You play a completely different game. One that matters more than I realized." "And Wesley? He knows this is coming. I think he's actually relieved. He never wanted to be in over his head." I considered the offer. Not for long, I'd been expecting this conversation in some form, though I'd predicted it would take another week. But I wanted Pierce to sit with the discomfort a bit longer. To really understand that expertise and leadership aren't interchangeable with enthusiasm and ambition. I have conditions, I said finally. Name them. 1. When I identify technical risks, they're treated as actual risks, not pessimism to be managed away. 2. The team structure I recommend gets implemented without executive interference. 3. You publicly acknowledge that the project's success depends on technical leadership, not strategic vision. Pierce flinched at the last one. It was basically asking him to admit he'd been wrong in front of the entire organization. Done, he said. Then yes. I'll take back the technical lead role. He sagged with relief. When can you start? I never stopped, I replied. I'll have a recovery plan on your desk by end of day Sunday. The team will have their revised roles and responsibilities Monday morning. And Pierce? Yeah? The next time someone tells you they don't play office politics well enough, consider that maybe they're just playing a game you can't see. The recovery plan took most of the weekend to compile, but it wasn't starting from scratch. I'd been tracking every decision, every risk, every deviation from best practices since the day Pierce removed me. Not out of spite, out of professional habit. When you've spent 12 years building systems, you learn to document everything. Monday morning's executive review was tense. The CTO wanted answers. The client's concerns were legitimate. But I'd brought something Pierce couldn't manufacture with charisma, a credible technical roadmap with honest timelines and achievable milestones. Why wasn't this approach taken from the start? The CTO asked at one point. Pierce, to his credit, didn't deflect. Because I made leadership decisions without understanding technical complexity. That's been corrected. The project didn't magically fix itself. Real recovery never works that way. But with proper technical leadership restored, the team shifted from rigid compliance back to genuine collaboration. Yuki stayed late not because she was required to, but because she wanted to solve an interesting problem. Malcolm proactively identified security concerns before they became blockers. Sophia optimized systems without being asked because she knew I trusted her judgment. We delivered the Helix project 2 weeks past our original timeline but well within the revised schedule. The client was satisfied enough to sign an expansion contract. Wesley moved to a senior developer role where he actually thrived without leadership pressure. And Pierce? He learned something valuable about the difference between authority and influence. 6 months later, I was having coffee with Yuki again, celebrating this time, not strategizing. She raised her cup in a mock toast. To playing office politics well enough, she said with a grin. I smiled. You know what's funny? Pierce still thinks politics is about knowing the right people and making the right impressions. He doesn't understand that in technical organizations, the deepest politics happen in code reviews and problem-solving sessions. In who people trust when things break. In who they want watching their back during client presentations. The invisible infrastructure, Yuki said. Exactly. The systems that only become visible when they break. So did you play politics? She asked. By stepping back and letting things fall apart just enough to prove your point. I considered the question seriously. I did exactly what Pierce told me to do, respected the chain of command he established. The fact that exposed how much invisible work I'd been doing isn't manipulation. It's just reality becoming visible. That's definitely politics, Yuki laughed. Maybe she was right. But if so, it was the kind of politics built on actual competence and relationships earned through years of showing up, delivering results, and treating people with genuine respect. The kind that doesn't require a VP's blessing to be effective. 3 days had been enough for Donovan Pierce to learn what I'd known all along. Titles grant authority, but leadership is something you build brick by brick, code review by code review, late night by late night. You can't shortcut it. You can't delegate it. And you definitely can't remove it without consequences that ripple through every system that person touched. I don't think Pierce will make that particular mistake again. But then again, some people never quite learn that the quietest people in the room are often the ones holding everything together. They don't need to play office politics loudly. They've already won a game most people don't even know exists.